Welcome, everybody. My name is Greg Peterson, and I am the act before the real show. And my role is I am one of the co-founders of the Robert H. Jackson Center, located in Jamestown, New York. And you just entered the Robert H. Jackson Federal Courthouse. Now, sometimes there are names on buildings, and you probably either are interested in saying, who was that person? Or maybe a name on a building, you just simply say, I don't care. Or it's a name on a building that you see in the news or listen to on the radio, that certain activities occur in the Robert H. Jackson Federal Courthouse. So curiosity, hopefully some of you have, and I'm here to talk about, is who was the guy? Who was Robert H. Jackson, who was a product of Western New York, and he became the answer to a Jeopardy question recently, named the only person in the history of the United States to be Solicitor General, to be Attorney General, and to be a Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Only person. And who was Robert H. Jackson? Who was the first and only chief American prosecutor at the Nuremberg trial, which tried the Nazis, surviving Nazis at the end of World War II, in the first international criminal tribunal ever. And that was a question, and the answer is Robert H. Jackson. And what is the question you now hear, if you're listening to the radio very closely, is should Vladimir Putin and his generals ever be brought to justice? And if there was a tribunal for the crimes that have been allegedly occurring, and I think we can actually say been occurring, because we see it every day on social media and the television and video coverage, is what would be the context. And it would be the Nuremberg trial. And who was the Nuremberg trial? The architect of that was Robert H. Jackson. So Robert H. Jackson is the name on the courthouse. He's also the person behind much of what has happened, which were very, very important in the history of the Supreme Court, and is the name behind the tribunal, which in fact is the one that may be used as a template upon which Vladimir Putin would be tried. Right here, Western New York. A little bit more background regarding him. This is sort of the Reader's Digest. He was born in 1892, and by the way, I think everybody got a book, hopefully, of Robert H. Jackson. It gives you a nice overall review of him. But he's born in 1892, just over the border in Pennsylvania called Spring Creek Township. And there he stayed until age 5, went to a little place in New York State called Frewsburg, New York. For the Buffalo Bills fans, that's the home of Shane Conlon, way back when. And there he graduated from high school, valedictorian. We don't talk about the fact there was only a class of 7, but hey, when you're the valedictorian, you're a valedictorian. And he was a valedictorian, and then he spent 1 year at Jamestown High School, of which I was a graduate. And he never went to college. No college. Never graduated from law school, only attended 1 year of that. And he got a certificate. Read for the law. And at the earliest age, possibly age 21, passed the bar and became a lawyer. He practiced law in Western New York, including Buffalo. His offices were in the Ellicott building. Just right here, literally his path from his apartment, as would have it, to the building, walked right through this place here, where we are today. And as a result, Jackson, until 1934, practiced private law, just like many lawyers you'll be seeing today. And in 1934, he was asked by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to see if he would leave practice for a year or two to go to Washington and become the assistant attorney general in the Department of Justice dealing with taxation issues. He actually sued Andrew Mellon, so if you ever see the Mellon Bank or the Mellon Library or the Mellon anything down in Pittsburgh, that's the guy. He sued him for fraud, and he won. And then he became, in very meteoric fashion, the Assistant Attorney General. He became a Solicitor General, Attorney General. He was intimately involved when you study your history about the Lend-Lease program during World War II. He's the guy that wrote the opinion, which permitted President Roosevelt to lend-lease naval ships in exchange, and that actually permitted Winston Churchill to, in fact, have some successes which would preceded our involvement in World War II. He was involved in 1941. He became a justice of the Supreme Court. Now, this is a justice of the Supreme Court, a guy who never went to college, never graduated from law school, from Western New York, the first guy ever from Western New York to become a justice of the United States Supreme Court. Amazing. And he was involved in some of the really seminal cases, some of which you will have read. For example, West Virginia versus Barnett is probably his most famous case. It's a flag salute case. You might read that in American history. It's his decision. Fred Korematsu, who's a Japanese American internee during World War II, was put in a internment camp, and you'll read about that too in your history. He wrote a very important dissenting opinion, which became ultimately the law. Youngstown steel seizure, so when every president who signs an executive order and declares it to be law, and the Congress says you can't have it because you've exceeded your constitutional abilities, because the president can't just simply sign things into law unless it fits a certain guidelines. Those guidelines were created by Robert H. Jackson, your guy. And the most famous case of all, Brown versus Board of Education. He was intimately involved and on the court during that time period to get unanimity. He was instrumental in getting all the justices to agree to, in fact, that unanimous decision in Brown versus Board of Education, which I assume you all are aware. So that's your guy here. Pretty amazing. And again, on top of the fact was the fact of the Nuremberg trial, 1945-46, he was the chief prosecutor. He was the architect for the creation of the court to get all the allies to agree that there would be a tribunal to try people for crimes of aggression, crimes of peace, crimes against all those items that you hear about with Vladimir Putin. It's Jackson. So while you're sitting in this courthouse today, or you're looking at the book, do not read the book while we're doing the program today, because this is an amazing program you're going to see today with United States District Court Judge Richard Gergel. It's incredible. But know full well you're sitting in a courthouse known as the Robert H. Jackson Federal Courthouse, which has that kind of legacy and an answer to a Jeopardy question, and in fact, one which has a relevancy today. He died in 1954, by the way. But all the justices, just an aside how much they revered him, all the justices of the United States Supreme Court got on a train and for the first and only time left Washington en masse to attend a funeral in Jamestown, New York. Quite remarkable. So I am here to just give you a little background of Robert H. Jackson, so hopefully you walk away with a nugget or two. You might listen to Jeopardy. You might go back and check out some of those questions, because know full well you'll know the answer before your neighbors who haven't listened to this regarding Robert H. Jackson. So in about 5 minutes, the court will convene, and you'll have an opportunity to have an extraordinary program today. With that, I thank you very much for your attention.